A couple things. First off, Elder Muungano, thanks so much for the opportunity. This is an area that, for me, is extremely important. It's an area that I'm passionate about. And to be quite frank, I think it's an area that, as a congregant, as a people, and even as a Kenyan community, we don't talk enough about. And it's finances and winning with finances. So these type of conversations are intended to be more dialogue, less presenting. But if there was a theme that I had to categorize today's conversation, it'll be winning with money. How can we, as not just Kenyans, but Christians, win with money? And that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time on today. So here's the structure and the layout. I want to start by just talking through my personal journey with finances, calling it my life, my God, my money. Why this became important to me, why do I care about it, and why should you care about it? Then we're going to talk about, what does the Bible say about money? I think the Bible is very clear. It gives some good descriptives, and it gives good guidance on how we should look at money. And I'm going to sprinkle text throughout the presentation. And then I'm going to provide 4 steps to what the Bible, and also data suggests on how we can build lasting wealth, right? Wealth that goes beyond just you and I, but it can go to our children and our children's children. But the best part of this presentation is going to be around Q&A. So any questions you have, I'll try my best to answer it. So that's the structure and the layout that I have. I know we have until 8 o'clock. I want to make sure that we give you enough time to do, season of prayer. So we'll kind of get through it. I'll spend again a couple minutes talking through these items, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. All right. So let's start with how I came into this, and I'll share my personal story, but I want to provide a little bit of context to why this became important to me. And the reality is this became important because I personally had an experience watching the financial burdens of the church. What do I mean? Well, when I was young, and it was doing youth programs, every time we wanted to try to do something, and I don't know if you guys can relate with this, but one of the reasons why we couldn't do anything a lot of times is because there was limited funding, no budget, right? Like, no money. I want to do this. Yeah, we can't do that. Sorry, no money. And as I was younger, I kept hearing a lot of no's, and a lot of the no's were tied to funds. And as I started getting older, even when you start looking at different projects, whether it's church buildings or it's renovation projects or community events or community service projects, it requires money, and the biggest burden and concern on people was money. That to me was a trigger. Like, that to me was a problem, because God's people in the Bible never really struggled, right, with resources. When the church was clicking in all cylinders, you see in the Old Testament and New Testament, there was more than they could even handle, right? So it was never God's design that we struggled with money. So that was number one. Number two is I just see members struggling, man. I see members for a long time struggle with money, and I would hear testimonies time and time again on how they were down to their last check, and they woke up one morning and God put a few dollars in their bank account, and I hear people applaud and get excited, and the Spirit was telling me, is this what God called us to do? To be pinching pennies and counting dollars? No. God called us to be more. And when I look at what members were struggling with, where someone had to pick between tithe and paying rent, that should not be a testimony. Now, granted, listen, there are one-off, there are situations, but the overall theme should not be people are struggling that they have to choose between a love offering and putting food on the table. And then lastly, even when I started to get a fervor, I realized, man, there was no financial literacy. Like, no one talked about it. I mean, we'll talk about good character. We'll talk about behaving and getting an education. We'll talk about school, especially in the Kenyan community. We could tell you to become a doctor and get a PhD, but no one talked about how to make money and where money comes from. And it was almost frowned upon. So when all these things started clicking, I realized at this point that God has been planting a seed that it's important for me to communicate why good stewardship and management of money is important. And this journey started, man, I'll be honest with you, 2015. I found myself $90,000 in credit card debt. And I owned a property, and I felt like, hey, look, it's okay. It's the way of life. You know, debt is part of life. I own a home. I'm good, guys. I'm going to work till I'm, 70. Then I can retire into the sunset, because that's when my mortgage will be paid off. That was the mindset I had. And I realized that, no, something's wrong. And this is how my journey has been. I praise God today that that $90,000 in debt is gone. I'm debt free, with the exception of this mortgage that I have here in Maryland. But that's my personal story with money, and it kind of sets, it'll help you at least understand the lens that I look at when talking about money. Let's transition to what the Bible says about money. And the Bible talks a lot about it, but there was one text that hit me the hardest in the Old Testament. And I'm going to take a paraphrase, but I'm going to go to the scripture. I encourage you, when you get a chance, go home. I mean, you're home, but like, get a chance to read it, digest it. The Bible says, the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You will always be at the top, not the bottom. And if you look at it, and actually, and I posted the text, verses number 12. This is taken from Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 12 and 13. But verse 12 says, the Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season and bless all the work of your hands. You will lend money to nations, but will borrow from none. Let me read that one more time, because I want that to sink into your brain. He says, the Lord, Jesus, God, will open up the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty. He will send rain onto your land, Muungano, in a season, and bless all the work of your hands. Bless you at the job. Bless you in the office. Bless you at home. Bless you in Kenya. Everywhere you go, God said he will bless you. And he says, you, the church, will be the ones who will lend money to nations. And you will borrow from no one. This is, in other words, what God is saying, that I'm going to bless you. I want to bless you with so much money that the world is looking to you, not Bank of America, not corporate institutions. They're not looking to government for funds. That there's enough, if the church is clicking on all cylinders and we're building wealth the way we're supposed to, people will be looking to you to borrow money and not anywhere else. And that's what's clear in terms of what the Bible speaks about money. It was never our intentions to be poor. It was never God's intentions for us to be broke, right? It was never God's intention. And then let me come up your lane, guys. It was never God's intention for you to be working till 90 years old, keeping the job that you have just so you can pay your mortgage. It was never God's intention for you to leave Kenya, come to America, work 3 security jobs for the rest of your life to send money back home, and for you to live in the basement. That was not God's design for you. And I think it's important that you guys understand this, because we have to shape and reshape our idea of what winning with money really looks like. So I'm gonna pick a biblical character. This is the guy we hail, King David. We sing songs about him, we know about him, we love him. He's the psalmist of psalmists. I want to just, for this moment, if you guys can unmute, I want you guys to guess what was the net worth in today's dollars of King David.
$10 billion.
10 billion. Good guess. Good guess. Anybody else? This is a Christian, a man after God's own heart. Anyone else?
I think he must have been the Bill Gates of the time.
Okay, Bill Gates. Billy's probably worth 80 or 90 billion. All good guesses, man. All good guesses. Is there? I'll take one more guess.
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff, well, okay, how much? Give me a number.
200 billion.
Good guess, man.
I would go for $1 trillion.
Let me tell you this. David has given offering of $158 billion towards his temple. In case you doubt, look at, this is taken from 1 Chronicles 22, verse 14. And behold, in my trouble, I have prepared for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold and 1,000,000 talents of silver and of bronze and iron without weight. This is what he prepared for the church. To help you give context, 1 talent is 75 pounds. In their ounces, they call it troy ounces. It's 1,000 ounces per talent. 1 ounce of gold in today's money versus there, if you look at it, it's $14.50. $14.50 for 1 ounce of gold. If you multiply that by the 1,094, the brother gave $158 billion in offering alone. He was worth well over $200 billion. Now, the crazy thing is, you think he was wealthy. His son, Solomon, was a trillionaire. Listen, guys, these are biblical giants, man. You know, we would love to be worth 1 million, 2 million. And we feel nervous when we ask God, make me a decamillionaire. The Lord blessed David more than you could even imagine. And remember, David spent a lot of time running away from Saul. The guy was a shepherd's boy. He wasn't born into money. Like he was working sheep. He accumulated after Saul left and he became king. The Lord blessed him, right? So again, don't be scared of building wealth, all right? It's actually encouraged. And this is what's even critical. And I was having this conversation earlier today. The number, when we look at how not just how God blesses the family, but how the devil attacks the family. You know, one of the top reasons why, you know, we, a husband and wife divorces outside of fidelity, number 2 is financial issues. It's one of the secret weapons. The devil uses finances to burden you. If I did a poll today in the church and said, what is the number 1 stress factor in this church? I can almost guarantee you every time it's finances, being able to make life meet, right? So I want you guys to get past the idea that it's a sin or it's unholy or it's wrong to build wealth. As a matter of fact, God's people ought to build wealth. So I'm going to give you guys 4 principles that I think, if implemented, can help you build a life of wealth. 4 very simple steps. I can socialize this PowerPoint deck, but I really want you to take notes. And I'll start with number 1. Number 1, cancel debt. Cancel debt. There's no form of good debt. You know, oh, this debt's good. I need a, you know, emergency, you know, credit card and, credit card. Let me tell you, the number 1 thief to wealth is interest. It's debt, owing somebody. The Bible even says that a borrower is slave to the lender. You will be a slave. If you ever owe someone, let me tell you something. If you just imagine a world where you didn't even have a mortgage, or you didn't have, tons of credit cards, or you didn't have student loans. Imagine the freedom you have. One of the things that's stealing freedom from our people, Black people especially, is debt. Today we have about $1 trillion in auto loan debt across the country. And we have well over $1 trillion in student loan debt. 2 debts that could be avoided. 2 debts that could be avoided that is crippling millennials and is crippling our generation. That's the first step. You got to cancel debt. And the Bible speaks to this. In Proverbs, it talks about wisdom around debt. And the challenging thing is, and look, by the way, God, this is an area I struggled with too. You start running into debt when you live beyond your means. Credit cards become an extension of your income. That is a very dangerous place to be. So if you really want to build wealth, you have to cancel debt. And debt is not just an action, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And you can't be free if you're owned by Wells Fargo. Can't be free if you're owned by Bank of America. You can't be free if you're owned by Capital One. Freedom comes when you first get the idea that I don't want to be owing people stuff. This audacity we have to ask people for money. I showed y'all the text in Deuteronomy. The Bible says that you will lend money. You will never borrow money. Get that mindset out, number one. Number two, and this is important. Now that you canceled debt, you looked at all your credit cards, you figure out how to remove them, right? You cut them up, you start living within your means, you reduce your expenses, and you go on the attack. The second thing is you have to save and protect. This is an area we struggle with, especially in the Kenyan community. Now, what do I mean save and protect? It's a couple things. I think number one is you got to have 3 to 6 months expenses set aside in a savings account. Money market savings account, 1% interest rate, whatever that case is, that's fine. You got to have it. I'm telling you guys, emergencies always come. They always come. You got to have 3 to 6 months emergency savings fund. The protect piece, this is important. This is very important. You have to be at a place where you can protect your wealth and everything that you're building. And the way you do that, the best way to do it is through having adequate and appropriate insurance, okay? Insurance that can protect not just you from from damages and hurt, but also from your health, right? One of the biggest causes of bankruptcy is poor health or medical bills after a surgery or whatever. Make sure you have the appropriate insurances to protect you. Life insurance. This needs to be an important piece for the Kenyan community. We have become over-dependent on fundraisings to help support us when we lose a loved ones. That's not how wealthy people think. You protect your assets, you protect all your items by having appropriate coverage. What does appropriate coverage look like? It looks like 10x your income. If you make 100,000, you should have $1 million in a term life insurance policy. That way, when you die, we're not scrambling to find money to help. We should be grieving you, not worry about the financial burdens. So save and protect. From an emergency, have 3 to 6 months cash on hand, ready to go. From life issues, having health insurance, auto insurance, but most importantly, life insurance. That's what you guys need to have. Then step 3, this is important, invest your money. There's a difference between saving and investing. And saving is to there to protect when something happens. Investing is intended to help build and accumulate wealth. I'm not going to do it this session, but we could always come back and talk about this idea of compounded interest. But one of the areas I invest my money in, and I've watched it do miraculous things. I've invested in real estate. I invested in stocks, right? These are the type of investments that I'm seeing, for me, 10 to 12% on an annual basis. And if you've been studying the market over the past couple of years, listen, man, the market's almost tripled. During the coronavirus, the people who are hurting the most, right, are the ones who are not investing, who are dependent on an income coming only from job. But if you are invested in the stock market and you were there in the beginning of COVID, you've tripled your money. In some instances, you've tripled your money. That happens when you invest, all right? Invest your money, it's important. And then the last one, this is the part that, let me tell you something, guys. When you have no debt and you're wealthy, there's no better feeling than giving. Giving is not a burden, man. So when God says, I love a cheerful giver, you could be cheerful when the bills are paid, everything is covered, right? And yet you can give. You no longer worry about 10%. Peter Muungano, you don't worry about 20%. You give like you've never given before. And that's when the people of God have come to a place where they're debt-free. They owe nobody anything. They have a protection plan in place, and they've invested their money where they're wealth, and now they're multimillionaires. We can give like we've never given before. If we say we need a new building, we can get a new building. If we say someone's hurt, we can donate. If kids can't go to school, we can give them school. The church functions at its best when the people of God and who love the Lord and who love to give have the money to give. Those are the 4 steps that I believe are going to help really transform people's life. And I'm not telling you because I read it in a book. I'm not telling you because I've watched it. I'm telling you because I'm living it right now. I'm a living testimony on what drastically could happen when I changed my financial trajectory back in 2015. And in 5 years, I'm in a much different place than I was before because I started listening to what God told me and has instructed me on how to handle money. And that's the blueprint that I'm giving to you guys today. So again, I know I've talked pretty fast and I've given a high level, but again, the big, if there's anything you take away from today is this, that God wants you to win with money. He doesn't want you to be poor. I focused on David, but if I would spend time, I could have talked about Solomon, who was a trillionaire. I could have talked about Job, who was worth billions of dollars. I could have talked about Abraham, who was an entrepreneur in his own right and wealthy. If you look at a lot of the biblical heroes, they were wealthy. They were wealthy. God blessed them with money. They were not meant to be the head and the tail. So change your trajectory around money. And not just change your trajectory around money, but learn the 4 principles, which is get rid of debt, save and protect, invest, and give. So I'm going to pause now, and I want to open the floor if there's any questions that you guys might have. I'm more than willing to answer. And pardon the darkness, guys. It's raining here, and I don't have an office light yet, but hopefully you guys can. You know what I look like. So, I'll pause and turn it.
I have a question, Abuga.
Sure.
Okay. You hiding your face is okay. I'll see you next time. This is Joyce. I have a question when you say cancel the debt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, for some of us, we went to school with student loan. You know, we couldn't do any better because we didn't have any other way. Anyhow,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we had to take a loan for us to have education. Without the loan, we couldn't go anywhere. Even though it's building, we might not finish even paying. Maybe we'll die while we're still paying anyhow. Mm-hmm. So how do I cancel that debt?
Good question. So let me address that in 2 ways. I'm going to start with anyone who's thinking about going to college. The idea or the myth that you have to be in tons of debt to go to college is a fallacy. Let me tell you why. Number one, community colleges. I know we look down on them, but as a professional, no one cares where you start. They care where you finish, right? So you do your first 2 years of community, and then the next 2 years in the state school, you know, and reduce money that way, it'll go a long way, right? Number one. Number two, if you can work through college and go to a local state school, I'm telling you, that whole time management and paying for your college, there was actually a study showing that people who actually work and go to college at the same time actually perform better than people who are just sleeping on campus, right? There's this level of discipline that's applied. And then last, apply for scholarships. So I want to start with that, you know, just getting rid of the myth that you have to get an enormous debt, you know, to go to college. So, you know, again, and the way I do that, community college, scholarship, work, and avoid the local private schools that's going to charge a lot of money. So for us, you know, instead of going to Seton Hall, maybe go to Rutgers, right? Instead of paying $50,000 a year, you know, go to NJCU. Now, for those who have a lot of student loan debt, you got to put a plan in place. You listen, the goal is not to leave debt for your children. The goal is to leave assets for your kids, right? So you have to be able to have a budget and a plan to eliminate it, to pay it down. Now, there's different mechanisms to pay this debt. You heard snowball, you heard, you know, how to tackle it, but you got to put a plan in place where, you know, if you put, let's say 3 years or 5 years to pay your debt, you're going to make some sacrifices into Joyce, right? So maybe you're not going to go traveling all the time. Maybe you're not going to be eating out in restaurants all the time, right? Maybe you're not, you know, doing all the lavish things. Maybe it's just rice and beans for a while until you knock some of that stuff out. Because those things, again, are stealing away from really, really having wealth to build.
Thank you, Ella Yamwange. This is Ms. Ongaro. Just before I ask the question, I was also going to encourage the younger population that apart from community colleges and all, if you are what is it? If your GPA is very high,
Mhm.
you can go to school absolutely free.
Yeah.
So sometimes we put less effort in studying, and so we pay for it. That is not the only way, the same way, the other ways that Joseph has said. But my question, which this is interaction, it is not like set on stone. My question is that the life insurance thing that you alluded to
Mhm.
covers the person who is insured, and like for some of us who are of older generation, our parents were not insured because they didn't work, they didn't have insurance.
Yeah.
So if I depend on insurance to alleviate my problems, it does not apply because the many people who depend on me
Yeah.
or who look up to me to help during death are not insured. If you are insured, you are the only one insured, that means you wait until you die and then your money can help somebody else. But, or it may not help because some insurances end up when you retire.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So, well, a good, maybe not question, but that's a good scenario. So a couple of things. I, Joseph Muungano, I have a wife and 2 kids. Okay. So if I die, I need to make sure that there's a protection mechanism. So Sasha is not asking the whole Kenyan community to please help me bury Joseph, right? I can't pay the mortgage now. I'm struggling. I can't afford to do anything. We lost a huge income. So when I get insurance, it's to make sure my family's taken care of, okay? And having adequate insurance. Now, I also suggest that your insurance should not be locked into your job because you can lose your job and you won't be insured. I will get an independent insurance outside of your work. And I know sometimes your jobs offer you, automatically get a standard, but they may encourage you to buy up. I don't advise to that only because your job may be temporary, right? It may not be permanent. However, you're right. There are some older people who don't have life insurance. And if they try to get life insurance right now, it'll be too expensive and they can't do it. Here's my guidance to you. You should have money set aside, taken care of while you're living, right? Money set aside to handle these things once you're gone. You should have a will in place on how money is going to be allocated and given. Matter of fact, everyone on this call, if you have any ounce of family and you have any asset, you should have a will that articulates exactly what you're gonna do. So like for instance, for me, I have a legacy drawer. I have letters in case I die that is gonna be written out to my wife, my family, and my church. And I have all the documents of every bank account, where it's gonna be. And I have a living will, which breaks down how all my personal wealth is gonna be outlined. I can promise you, if Joseph Muungano dies today, Sasha will not ask you for 1 ounce, 1 penny, 1 iota, because it's extremely detailed on where she needs to get, how she's gonna fund my funeral, how she's gonna fund everything. Everyone on the phone, no secret, we all will die. That's a fact. Unless the Lord comes right now and we're translated, we will die. So we have to prepare for it, right? So to answer your question, or at least to answer the scenario, if you're older, make sure you have at least enough money to take care of your burial expenses put aside, right? People should not be dependent on you, right? Outside of your immediate family to do it. Now, the other piece, if you're older, right? That means your kids are older. They should not need a whole bunch of money. They should be able to take care of themselves. Life insurance is really important for those who have younger kids and families who are dependent on your salary. I hope that helps.
Can I ask a radical question on top of that? When we were growing up, we were told that if you are Christian,
Yeah.
you don't take up life insurance. I mean, Can we share that? Like that was, I mean, I had that a lot growing up, that we should not take life insurance because that means we are not depending on God.
That is one of the, that is so false.
Bo, can I help respond to that question?
Please.
Yeah, you know, it is true what Sister Mary is saying. That when we were growing up, the only thing that she skipped where we were growing up, because you see where we were growing up was different. When people died, they get buried at home. You don't need a cemetery to bury anybody where we were growing up.
Yeah.
It is a different scenario. Now we are in a different setting, in a different culture, where I can almost see how this will apply what Abuga is saying. Because, you know, people at home, you know, if somebody passes away, he has land. And, you know, he has cows. If there are no cows, the parents have cows. They will do a ceremony and they'll buy. So I think that is a very difficult, because it's culturally sensitive, but I think it's something that even me, I have to think to come to terms that actually these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I understand what this is a very question.
Thank you for
I understand it, but it's a different setting now.
Yeah, but and I appreciate that context. Just remember, the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Okay, that's the biblical. Matter of fact, David, right before he died, not only left an inheritance for Solomon, but gave him a blueprint. Right, that's what will does. All insurance does is provide the financial mechanism to support, right, whatever is going to happen. So times have changed. It's not unchristian. I guess that's the message I'm trying to get across, to have a protection plan in case you die.
Elder Boga, I just also want to share a little bit because I worked in the insurance industry for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say for those who are elderly, there is other proper. You may find some of our elderly who are here. I think that what they can do is, if you own property, usually what happens, I don't know if we're gonna end up in nursing homes or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned is what the white community does. If they own property and they are getting to their 60s, they sell that property before, because if you go to the nursing home, the first thing they'll do is they will sell your property. And when they sell it, there will be tax on it. Half of it will go to the government, then half of it will go to your children. But let's say you have a 100,000 house and you sell it before, then you have 100,000. You take 10,000 and buy $1 million insurance. That's something that you can transfer to your children without being taxed, as opposed to giving them a house which they will be taxed and lose all that money. I also want to share with the young people who are here about school. I would say one of the tricks, I know a lot of us work in group homes, but I would say another way to raise money, work somewhere like in a hospital where they pay. I know tuition is about $8,000 a year that they can pay for you. So regardless of what you do, they'll pay for you $8,000. That's something that you can use to pay for your tuition. And lastly, I'll say that for those of us who owe government money, there's other ways. I think they have a program whereby if you work for non-profit organizations, then after 10 years, I think there's a loan forgiveness debt or something like that. I am just adding to how we can cancel that debt.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Wycliffe.
Elder Boog, I have a question that usually comes up and people sometimes argue about it. And this is in relation to maybe couples. What's your take on joint accounts?
That's a great question. So if you're married, I'm 100% in line and in favor of joint accounts. Me and my wife have not only joint accounts, we budget together. We look at it as really one source of income, right? Regardless of who makes more or who makes less, you have equal say. And when you're married, that's important. There's no like, you do your thing, I do my thing. As a matter of fact, I was reading an article that talks about people who build wealth, and they talk about who you marry. They talk about the impact of who you marry and how you both look at money can help accelerate, right? So, going by yourself is okay, but you're better together. So I'm for, I actually like tell people not to do siloed accounts. Like I actually tell people, have a joint account, talk about money together. When you sleep at night, pillow talk, like that needs to be, when you talk about your children and getting an education and you're talking about church, you also need to include talking about how you look at your money. So yeah, I'm for joint accounts.
Elder Buga, I have a question. I know you emphasize that you should pay off debt first before anything. So my question is towards investing. Mm-hmm. What's your take on investing while paying off debt? Because I know some companies have 401k match, and you don't want to lose on that. It's basically a free money. So should we take advantage of the 401k that has a match and continue to pay off debt while we still invest?
Yeah, that's a good question, and this is one I've struggled with a little bit, to be honest with you. So debt does kill, like it steals away. What I would encourage people to do is just do the bare minimum match. So let's say the cap is $2,500. I would do that, the minimum you put to get that free money, and then put everything else towards the debt, right? So again, you're not going to really unleash the power of wealth building and investing the way you ought to until debt's cleared. But I agree with you. You don't want to leave money on the table. So my counsel is just do the bare minimum to match, right? Like to get that free money, and then pour all your resources. Because debt is a mind game. It's not even about numbers sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? It's about momentum. It's about like, there's a different feeling when you pay off that first credit card, and you pay off the next one, and you start kind of building. So, that'll be my counsel.
Also, you mentioned that about term life insurance. Mm-hmm. So, for the younger generation or the millennials, would you encourage them to take a whole life insurance or just the term life?
Term. I'll go term all day, every day. For this reason, I mean, I've talked to insurance agents, and a lot of them pitch, whole life. The problem with whole life is it's extremely expensive, right? And the returns are not as good as you can get with some, good mutual funds in the marketplace, right? And it also comes with fees. Term is cheap, man. You can literally spend $50 a month and get $1 million in coverage. Versus if I wanted $1 million in coverage and whole life, I have to pay $700 a month. And they'll tell you can use that money and all that other stuff. But it's a short answer to your question. I believe in term across the board. I do think it may not necessarily be 100% necessary if you build it right and you're wealthy and you have millions and your kids are grown. You may not need insurance anymore, but to start, I would go term even if you're young.
So I would also add that for term you get more bang for your money.
Amen.
And you have agents, because they're paid on commission, and term is cheap to them. It's easier. Well, it's more profitable for them to sell you something expensive, like whole life, because it's got an investment element in it. But as you elder said, you can split the two so that you have protection of for term, and then the rest of the money you put it where you can get better returns with less money going out in commission to the agent. I'm hoping there's no agent.
No, it's
I have a question on that, Mr. Buga.
Yep.
when I came to America, I had term life insurance. But after 20 years, it expires. And when it expires, you see, we are not educated. We don't know what. We just take life insurance, term life insurance, and that's it. We stop there. We don't know what to go. So after 20 years, it expires. So for my age, when I took it when I was young, I was in my early 30s. So, and then now I'm heading to 60s. So when it expires, I have to start now on the higher level. I'm paying much more to get also another term life insurance, because when it expires, they tell you, oh, what you do is like what you call this life insurance, the one that you just lose and you don't get anything.
Correct.
I don't get no money back. No, it's just you have to start afresh. So how do you just calculate that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Great point. So for those who don't know, term insurance usually has a time limit on it. I usually do 25 years. You know, some can do 30, whatever you want. It depends on your price point. When it expires, it expires. Yeah. The idea is this: when you get to that age, right? Let's say it expires and you're 50. Your children should be grown, and there should be now no one dependent on your on you, right? Because insurance is for those who are dependent on your salary when you die. It's not just to have a whole bunch of money being released to a whole bunch of people. So the goal now is once it expires, right? You should not have people dependent on that income. And if the question now becomes, well, what about me? What about my wealth? There are different mechanisms to build towards that, right? But when you do a cost analysis between whole life and term, whether you're 20, 30, 40, and I've run numbers multiple times, it's just better bang for buck when you go term. So to answer your question, if you are past your term and it's over and it's expensive, yeah, it's very expensive. I would not buy more term insurance for another 25 years. I wouldn't, right? Because it's just too expensive. At that point, your kids should be grown and they should not be dependent on your salary anymore.
Muga, may I have a question too?
I had a question.
I'm having a question too, if I can ask.
Yep.
First of all, Muga, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much. You covered every area for the young people, for the seniors like us. I come from old school, and you said something that when perhaps you go to a nursing home for the future, if that is, if I have a property at, for example, a house or something, or whether it's in Kenya or here, but let me use the US now where I am. Mm-hmm. You kind of say that you can, it's better to sell your property rather than going to the nursing home and then the nursing home does it for you. There, the family loses. I come from old school. Whatever investment I have, whatever property I have, I always feel that my children can inherit that and it can help them going forward. So what's the best way to go?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So that wasn't my recommendation. I know it was given, I think, maybe by Wyclef. But let me
say something towards the question Elder Zacharias said. It is true what Elder Buga said, that if you don't have a plan about your house and you're suddenly taken to a nursing home, the first thing the lawyers do is to check about what property you have. Yeah. And legally it goes to them to sell it to pay for your maintenance in a nursing home or wherever. Right. So you may not, your children will not have any say, anything. Correct. But what I wanted to ask, if that is a possibility, some people, when they have a house, instead of putting it in their name, they put in a company name, so that when you are in a nursing home, they can't take up a company property from the company to go and pay for in the nursing home. So in that company name, maybe your children will be there. And so then, I mean, that is why I don't have clarity, but I had, so.
Let me help. And that, by the way, thank you so much for giving your input on that. So there are insurances, right, that would cover you if you had to go into a nursing home that you can get. And you don't wait till you're ready to go to a nursing home to get it. Matter of fact, I could get the name of it, but I forget. But I encourage people to get that type of insurance once they're north of 60. Because once you're north of 60, anything can happen, right? So having that coverage will protect your assets in case something happens. Because you're right. If you're stuck in a nursing home and the bill's picking up, it's eating away from whatever you have, right? They have to pay for it. Someone has to pay that bill. That's why I think having the appropriate insurance to cover that is important. And Uncle P, I would suggest maybe having another session later at some point, specifically targeting how do we protect and save and insure? Because I think that's a piece that's important. But
thank you. We'll make arrangements for that. Thank you so much.
No worries. But yeah, there are mechanisms that there are insurances to cover that. Now, I remember growing up, my mother always said, Joseph Abuga, please do not send me to a nursing home. Like that was her thing, right? So everyone has a different philosophy. But let me tell you something. Sometimes you get older, you get sick, you need special care, man. You know, you could be struggling with dementia, whatever that is. I don't know, Alzheimer's. You know, there's proper coverage for that where you don't have to forfeit all your assets, right? You don't have to give it away. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to lose it. You could be covered.
Abuga, I think I brought that up. I think what you can do is, because nursing homes usually look, I think maybe they look back 7 years and look at what property you had. So it's better you transfer the property to your children. Once you are going to hit 60s, transfer them. If you think you're going to end up being in a nursing home, but if you are if you are going to stay in your property, then you can keep it.
Yeah, again, look, that's a plan that parents, you should be having this conversation. If you're north of 60, 65, you should be thinking about how does the tail end gonna look? And again, if you're looking for insurance to cover you in case you have to go to a home so it's paid for, that's one. If you wanna sell your assets to your children, that's another thing. I can tell you for me, my parents will never give me their home before they die. And there's nothing wrong against them. They've worked hard for it and they deserve to have it until they leave this earth. Same for me. Like I tell my kids all the time, like, listen, this is my assets, right? You have to grow up a certain way and, you know, I'm not gonna give it to you before I go. Everyone's different. So my encouragement again is have a plan in place. It's all about preparation and planning and not getting caught off guard. Too many deaths, you know, too many people get caught off guard as if they didn't know someone was going to die. I mean, these things happen, so we just got to be prepared.
Abuga, before you, I know time is up. I want you to just give me a hint on. You spoke about investment. I hope I'm not being nosy too much, and that's part of learning. Invest your money in the stock market. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that? Or
yeah, so I'm going to give you just a brief way. So I personally invest in what we call, and I don't want to confuse everybody. And again, Uncle P, this might be another separate session on how to invest, or even those 4 categories. But I invest in good mutual funds, right? Mutual funds, all it is a whole bunch of stocks or a whole bunch of ownership in companies in one fund, right? So a fund can have a little bit of Amazon, a little bit of Apple, a little bit of Microsoft, a little bit of Exxon, a little bit of whatever. And I buy mutual funds that grow at a pretty decent rate, right? Without confusing you, I believe in diversification, right? So having multiple types. So I invest in 4 different categories: large companies, medium-sized companies, small companies, and international companies. I divide them across those 4, and I go after these good mutual funds that perform well. And let me tell you, I've been in the market over the last 5 years, with the exception of 1 year. Every year I've outperformed what the market does, right? By just picking this stuff. It's not complicated, but it does require some learning. I would advise either getting a financial coach, or again, I can give you a high level understanding of the market. It's not scary, right? It's not difficult, but that is a big portion of my investment. I also have invested in certain stocks. Now, I don't encourage people to go, oh, this company is going to blow up. This company is going to blow up. It's risky. I have a higher risk tolerance because, I'm younger. So I made big bets on companies like Microsoft. I bet on Apple. I bet on Amazon. I bet on Google. Any product that I use a lot, I bet. I bought Nikes. So instead of buying Nike Forces, I buy Nike stocks. I bought, when I'm always using Google. I work at Microsoft. Zoom. I'm on Zoom right now. Guess what? I own Zoom stock. So every time I'm logging on this thing and the stock goes up, great, right? So I invest in things that I'm comfortable with, that I understand. So that's probably the two different categories. I know, again, it could be confusing or it could be a lot. You can talk to me offline. I can give you more details, but that's my overall investment strategy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Also, Nyamange, Elder, just to add on investments, I know people have spoken about loans being a big thing in this country. Just to let them know that even kids, this is for the young parents like me, even kids can invest. So parents can open up custodial account for their kids, even if they're 1 year old, and then just put something as little, even if it's $30 or $50 in a month. And then by the time that kids reach 18 years old, you won't have to pay anything for college because that's the money they're gonna use. And with investing, it takes time, and with time it builds compound interest, and that's how young people are gonna get out of debt, because it's true, debt is a big thing in this country. So that will help.
I'll give you an example, and we can probably close on this. When I married Sasha, and I inherited a beautiful daughter, we had about $12,000 set aside for college. I got married in 2017. So it's now 2020. I put aside $100 a month, nothing crazy. In 3 years, that 12,000 is up to 27,000 because it was invested in the stock market. You're not going to do that by putting money in a savings account by yourself waiting. You'll never get there. College costs are exploding. So again, the purpose of this presentation today was just to kind of get you thinking, get you understanding. But if you're really going to want to change, you need to make the investment, right? You need to, again, get a financial coach. You need to, to be intentional about it. The church, Uncle P, I think, needs to also play a role here in providing more content on more tactical strategies on how to build wealth. It's a necessity. And if Muungano, if all you guys are doing it the right way, there's nothing you guys can't do in Jersey City and beyond.
I have one last question. So just because so now the pandemic came and some people had made investments and, so we ended up having to either rely on stimulus checks or whatever Donald Trump was giving. What's your take, especially when it comes to, he was giving a lot of money to businesses.
Yep.
Is that something that you could have taken? Because that's kind of like another loan per se, but maybe very low interest.
Yeah, so again, I avoid loans. This is why I always tell you emergency fund. 3 to 6 months should help you through this pandemic, right? If you had $6,000, 6 months of expenses set aside, it'll help you. If you didn't have money during the time and you got caught off guard, I encourage people, stop everything. If you can't even pay rent, stop and stack. Start saving money. Talk to your landlords, talk to whomever, come with a deal in place. But you can't rely on the government to save you or save us. It just won't, that's not a successful strategy, even a little stimulus. Now, loans, I'm not taking them. There were grants to businesses. And one thing you're gonna learn in America, LLCs and businesses get a lot more benefits than workers, right? If you're an employee, you don't get a lot of tax benefits. You don't get a lot of stuff. There was some grant money that was given to businesses. I received grant money towards my businesses, right? So that you don't have to pay back. But that ship has sailed, right? So for you, for the employees and the workers out there who are struggling, I encourage you, if, feel this. If it hurt, remember it, because an emergency will happen again. Save 3 to 6 months, more so 6 months, to protect you through that time.
Thank you so much, Brother Buga.
I got one question. Allow me to ask one question, please.
Okay, that would be the last
one last question, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah. I did hear Elder Buga mention about owning homes, but I didn't hear him saying anything about young people and us in general starting businesses. Is that a route that you would recommend for us in particular?
Yeah. So I'll give you a short answer. So my thing is real estate and stock. That's me. That's my investments. Entrepreneurship. If you want to make wealth, like build a lot of money, entrepreneurship is going to be an important piece, right? Like if you want to be like multi-millionaire, billionaire status, you can't be an employee. Now, being entrepreneurship is hard, extremely hard. 90 to 95% of businesses fail. So not everybody's an entrepreneur. If you came to me today and said, Joseph, can I be rich without being an entrepreneur? My answer is yes. You can make $30,000 for your entire life and retire with dignity as a multimillionaire if you save the right way. If you want to be filthy rich and be an entrepreneur and you're good at it, and you have the talent, the skills, and tenacity, yeah, you can make some pretty good money. So the intention of this conversation was not about, how to start a business or building an entrepreneurship. It was more about how do I win with the money that I have, and that's where we took it, right? And that's why I gave you the four principles of how to look at money. But yes, entrepreneurship. If you are an entrepreneur, then yes, right? It can yield great benefits.
Let me say again, thank you so much for those who have been part of this discussion. We really appreciate your input and your participation. And Brother Buga, now we know that this is a mind